Okay, so we're recording. I'll share my screen. We can get started. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining. So these draft goals really are intended. They need to be owned by the crop leads, and so if there's anything here that you find would be difficult for you to fully buy into, then today's the chance to raise any concerns, and if there's anything that is not well understood, again, today's the time to ask questions and to understand these things, because I want to get to a point where if the changes are needed, then we make them, and we arrive at a point where we have a set of goals that all the crop leads are fully bought into, and then we quickly move into implementation and working towards achieving these goals. Okay, so the purpose of these goals is to help you as crop leads to know where to focus during what we know is currently a very difficult time. There are a lot of changes going on. There are a lot of budget constraints. There's a lot of unknowns, and so the purpose here is to help you. And so this is that's what's intended here. And these goals build upon the November Dubai discussion, where some of the take-home messages from that discussion were that a lot of important progress has been made and that we are on track. And so these goals extend beyond that and take us to the next level from where the progress that we have made. And of course, there really is a very strong need for prioritization. And so there are two goals in particular that are focused entirely on prioritization, which I'll spend just a little bit more time on today. And right now, going into that prioritization just a little deeper, if we do an analysis across the CG is investing in too many trades, too many pipelines, too many market segments, and too many countries. And doing a little bit everywhere is not going to be successful, not going to result in what the Gates Foundation are calling breakthrough products. In addition, so we want to get to a point where we are successful, obviously. So doing a little bit everywhere is not going to be successful. So we want to change that and be more focused. But in addition, it does help us to be aligned with our largest funder, which is the Gates Foundation, and they also are looking for us to be more focused and on those areas where we really can produce a breakthrough product. We also hear from the breeding teams themselves that they need more funding in order to increase genetic gain in their most important pipelines, and this can be achieved through prioritization to redirect funding from less impactful pipelines, market segments, countries towards those that are more impactful. And this prioritization must be done by the crop leads. It must be done by you. The breeding teams cannot do it. They can't make these decisions, and B4T can't do this. So this can really only be done by the crop leads and needs to be driven by the crop leads, by you. It is very well understood that that all of you are going through some really severe funding constraints and that more funding is needed. But just to make the point that prioritization is not about that. The prioritization is about achieving maximum impact with the funds that you do have, regardless of how little or how much that is. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I'll get into the goals next, but before I do, just a quick introduction. What are these goals about? Well, they're about prioritization. That's goals 1 and 2. They're about improving methods and approaches to breeding. These are goals 4 through to 7, and improving methods and approaches to fundraising. This is goal number 3. And improving, I mentioned the importance of prioritization just previously. Improving breeding methods make us more successful and create an investment case for fundraising as well. It enables us to make a more compelling case to funders. And the third one is around the support, coordination, and enablement. That's goal number 8, working across crops. I just want to make the point that when it comes to the 6th goal, goal number 6, this does require funding to be focused on priority pipelines and products, and therefore further makes a case for prioritization. But the other goals, all the rest of them, are not about more funding. They're about doing things differently to be more successful. And so all the rest of the goals can be done regardless of the funding crunch that is occurring. Okay, so we'll get into these goals now. So the first one is around the breeding strategy, in particular product design. While we do have many good target product profiles, perhaps in the order of up to 65%, the remaining target product profiles do try to improve too many essential traits, and this will lead to negligible breeding progress. If you're trying to improve a large number of traits, it just will not be successful. And so the suggestion here is that target product profiles must target only 1 to 2, or at a stretch, a maximum of 3 value propositions for improvement. And less important traits should be changed to maintain or to nice to have. Now, a value proposition is a concept that has been developed to aggregate traits that are more likely to be genetically correlated. So if we look at some of the target product profiles, we may see a situation where let's say it's an RTB crop. There might be root width, root length, root size, root weight, dry matter weight, yield. These are all going to be you can imagine that many of these will be correlated with one another. And so if we aggregate those together into a value proposition called higher productivity, then that would be that. Then that's the way they get aggregated into that value proposition. So we're saying that we have that each TPP only targets one.
We can't hear you, Michael.
Yeah, I can't hear Michael. His internet must be just gone.
Hello. Can someone, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Michael.
Yes.
I apologize for that. It seems to be an internet problem, which I don't understand what has caused it. Can someone please let me know where I was up to when I froze or dropped out or stopped? I'm not sure if you heard the question. Could someone please let me know where I was up to when I dropped out
Up
or
to
when I froze?
product design, Michael.
Product design. Okay. All right. Was I just starting it or? Okay, I'll go back.
Yes, the starting of it.
Okay.
If you can
All
share
right.
the slides as well, Michael.
I will share the slides. Yes, I will. Okay. Let me get my screen back up. Sorry for this.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Okay.
So
Can you see my screen?
you covered point A. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So, okay, so point A is covered. That's what a value proposition is, and have 1 to 2. It's a way of having a rough first cut to find out what potentially might be feasible. But then once you've gone through that step, the next step is to check for uncorrelated or worse yet, negatively correlated traits within value propositions. So it may still be that within a value proposition, let's say it's disease resistance or biotic stress resistance, then it's you can easily imagine a situation where there are multiple diseases that are not genetically correlated at all, and yet they're still in the same value proposition. And so if that's one of the value propositions that is being targeted, then making improvements in even 3 of these may be too much, even though it's all within the one value proposition. And step C here is to decide this together with partners. So here you're going to be changing what it is that you're setting out to develop and deliver. You're changing the TPP. And so this needs to be decided with partners. What value propositions and traits will result in farmers, markets, consumers wanting to replace their current variety? This is critically important to do this together with them. Okay, so with each of these goals and also in the Word document, so all of this is built off that Word document which I shared before Science Week in early March. I shared it in early March. And each of these goals, we list out what the evidence will be. So this means this is where you or your team or anyone can look to see that this goal has been achieved or not. And the support describes, well, what cross-cutting team can you look to support your success in this area and to help. So for this particular goal, it'll be the evidence would be in the breeding portal, looking at the updated national and regional target product profiles, and support comes from the Refocus, Transform, and Accelerate teams. And just to make the point that in the next goal, I've got prioritization in the heading. This is about prioritization of traits. Okay, so the second goal, so I'll go through all of them and then we'll open up for discussion, and so please take notes of any questions you may have or any areas that you feel that you may want to challenge or discuss. The second goal is still with the breeding strategy, this time on priority setting, starting with pipelines. So before I get into pipelines, just to make the point that for the first time, we now have invaluable data aligning the development indicators with breeding pipelines, market segments, and country data. You can see this in the 3 worksheets in the file that I shared yesterday over email. If you don't have it, please ask me and I can send it to you. And this can be used to make strategic decisions around where to invest, in which breeding pipeline to invest, which market segments, and in which country. So using this information and looking at your own program, what really are your blockbuster pipelines and why? What are your pipelines that are going to deliver these breakthrough products? And how do you rank the relevance and opportunity of your pipelines from your most important, that is your pipeline that has the greatest opportunity for impact and greatest relevance, through to until you get through all of your pipelines. And importantly, make this ranking and associated rationale transparent within your team so that they also know about it. Okay, so moving from pipelines to market segments. Sorry, I just need to move this. Sorry. Okay. how do you rank the relevance and opportunity of, that's still in the way. There we go. How do you rank the relevance and opportunity of market segments or TPPs you're breeding for, and why? So it's similar. So moving from the same ranking as for previously for pipelines, but now targeting market segments. And when you do so, consider, can a truly breakthrough product be developed and delivered? And what is the opportunity for impact associated with the market segment? So for example, market segments with a very small hectarage generally have lower impact. What is the extent of farmer demand for the target product profile? If farmers are very happy growing what they're currently growing, then you're unlikely to drive high levels of adoption with an improved product. Are there alternative suppliers of improved varieties? If there are, then there's less need for the CG to be in that space. Is there a functional seed system in place or expected to be in place within the next 5 years? It doesn't make sense to be investing in breeding if once the product is developed, if there's no way for it to get to farmers. And what other relevant factors might need to be considered? For example, future game changes. If there's a new market segment that a different product is going to really take off, and you've got data to suggest that. The above exercise will likely create opportunity to reinvest resources from the bottom half of market segment or TPPs. They're one-to-one. So in this context, we can talk about them interchangeably, to the most relevant and impactful market segments, and to right-size breeding efforts. So ensure that the category of breeding effort and the level of investment is aligned with the opportunity for impact and the relevance. So just to reiterate here, we're suggesting that perhaps around 50% of what is currently being targeted could be stopped, so that the resources that are currently going to those less impactful, less relevant market segments gets reinvested to those that are more relevant and more impactful. Excuse me. Okay, so still with goal 2, moving. So we started with pipelines, we went to market segments, and now with countries. What countries does it make the most sense for you to work with and to deploy to? Well, these are going to be the countries where you find really champion partners, and where your crop or TPP is most important. And again, there are many ways, many things that can indicate whether a crop is important, but just at a very high level, those countries where there's very limited hectarage of that crop is likely to be less important. It's likely less important. And for this goal, and so this cuts across, I'll put this into a separate box because it cuts across all of this goal, not just for countries, but also for market segments and pipelines. The information will again be in the breeding portal by looking at the updated breeding strategy and investments and roles of partners. So it's not just about doing these jobs, it's about capturing it in the breeding portal. And support can come from Refocus, Transform, and of course inclusive delivery is the area of work to work with on understanding which scaling partners there are and how strong they are. Okay, so the third goal is around resource mobilization. We really need to work together across crops to huddle together to develop a stronger pitch for resources. One powerful way of doing this can be to aggregate highly relevant target product profiles into clusters describing how products will appeal to its target market and investors, where and why we are investing, and with what partners. And this is derived from your prioritization in goals 1 and 2. So examples of how these could be clustered could be that across crops, across TPPs, we could say this is the portfolio of TPPs across crops that are targeting climate resilience. These are the ones that are targeting food security. These are the ones targeting improved nutrition and so on. And in this way, we arrive at a level of aggregation that is more granular than just saying we develop improved products, which is just one, everything's lumped together, but less granular than saying we've got 450 target product profiles. That's just way too granular, and stakeholders and funders can't penetrate at that level. They can't get their heads around what the opportunity is. But if we can aggregate those across crops and regions to say, we can maybe even say in this region, Western Central Africa, there's, and it could be, it might be across 7 or 8 crops. Here are all the crops that are targeting climate resilience, for example. Then that's a more compelling case. So what would the evidence that we've achieved this be? It would be a high quality fundraising strategy that is being launched or invigorated, and we could do it together, even perhaps with important champions such as those that supported the World Food Prize laureate letter, for those that have seen it. And support for this can come from accelerated breeding, from market intelligence, and really from a higher level, from all of Breeding for Tomorrow. The fourth goal is around being more focused on trait discovery and deployment work. So currently, trait discovery and deployment efforts are being directed towards too many traits, and many of these have very limited investment and insufficient linkages with breeding pipelines and insufficient benefits to breeding pipelines. So the goal here would be to prioritize traits based on the needs of prioritized target product profiles, that there is lack of genetic variance in elite material, and that there's a strong case for cost-effective marker-assisted approach. If there is not, then it's unlikely that the TD&D work will flow through to impact. And when it comes to implementation, apply a harmonized stage-gated approach that both guides and supports decision-making in which trait discovery and deployment efforts to invest in. The evidence for this, that this has been achieved, would again be in the breeding portal through a newly established module that would describe the trait discovery and deployment activities, and that's where that would be documented, rather than continuing to be spread across Excel sheets and in SharePoint files, which is difficult to update, and it's difficult for people to get their hands on when they need it, and often people end up using out-of-date files, and there's multiple copies, etc. So the breeding portal is the way to go for this, and the support for this would come from Discover and Accelerate. Okay, so the fifth goal is around breeding teams meeting minimum standards. So these are things that really all programs should be checking off on and achieving. So first of all, ensuring that the breeding team's working with the right germplasm base. What's the right germplasm base? This means that the germplasm you're working with includes all the essential target product profile traits at high frequency. If it does not, then you're likely not working with the right germplasm. Manage the program in a database and use BioFlow. This is a marvelous tool to streamline data analysis. Use improved statistical designs. Document breeding schemes in Breeding Scheme Manager, aligned with the target product profile, and optimize these schemes. Implement a recommended check strategy and assess genetic gain. Use markers to apply QA/QC. Only run on-farm verification, or perhaps even late testing, for products that are potentially breakthrough products. There's no need to run on-farm verification just as a matter of process if you already know from previous data that the products being tested are not going to cut the mustard. They're not going to make it. But when on-farm verification is done, ensure that each genotype is tested at a minimum of 30 locations and capture gender disaggregated feedback. If you're doing on-farm verification on 8 locations, there's often way too much noise in that data for that to really tell you anything. And so you're spending a lot of money to not really get a conclusive answer or to get conclusive data. So the evidence that these things have been done would be across the breeding portal and in breeding scheme manager. So in the breeding portal, the bioflow uploads for multi-environment trial data and genetic gains would be there, and the updated cycle times for breeding pipelines. And the breeding scheme would be documented in breeding scheme manager. And for support, you'd be looking to accelerate, transform for NARS programs and to breeding resources. And just to make the point again that these are about changing the method and are not requiring additional investment. Okay, so this 6th goal is spread across 2 slides because there's a lot here. And this is things to accelerate genetic gains. And so with investments focused on fewer essential traits and fewer pipelines, and target product profiles and countries, crop teams would aggressively fix or discontinue trial sites approaches that consistently result in poor data quality. This is now, of course, teams could work with breeding resources to find out how they would fix it, but this is just to say that those sites need to be identified and they do need to be fixed or discontinued. It doesn't make sense to continue with an approach that is repeatedly giving poor quality data that you can't use. Innovate to develop high throughput phenotyping for all the essential target product profile traits. This again was an important comment that came from the Dubai discussion. And when I say high throughput phenotyping here, I'm not talking about drones. I'm just talking about having a method that for all those essential target product profile traits that you've got a way of testing for it in early testing. The classic example is quality traits or end-use consumer traits for RTB crops that are extremely important. It's a main driving factor for adoption by farmers, but it's really difficult to test in early testing for those traits. So that's where innovation is required. Moving to the 3rd one there, increase the relevance of early testing. This also is an important goal identified in the Dubai meeting, and there's a number of different ways in which that can be achieved. And further, of course, further shorten cycle time. These are all like the goal before. These are all things we've been talking about for some time. Okay, so continuing, the 5th one is to further mainstream molecular breeding, marker-assisted selection, genomic selection, or genomic assisted breeding in the breeding process with clear role clarity between breeders, molecular geneticists, and biometricians. Why do I mention that role clarity? Because there have been times where, particularly when it comes to genomic selection, it seems that there is a lack of clarity as to who's driving it, and between the breeders, molecular geneticists, and biometricians, and how it comes together with the routine selection that is based, for example, on phenotypic data. And to implement genomic assisted breeding to increase accuracy and genetic variance, and to increase selection intensity, and to reduce cycle time. It really can achieve all those things. The evidence that this is being done, again, would be in the breeding portal via the bioflow uploads from the multiple environment trial data and from the genetic gains reports, which also be reported into the breeding portal, and updated cycle times for breeding pipelines, again, also in the breeding portal. Support for this would come from Accelerate and breeding resources. Okay, 7th goal, and this is the last one for breeding teams, the last goal for breeding teams, and this is for the sub-regional teams, that the goal that was the very first goal to verify those 1 to 3 most impactful in-demand value propositions, that this be done with partners. So I mentioned it earlier, I'm putting it here as well because this is to be done with those sub-regional teams. That advancement decisions are made jointly with partners. That regional technical planning, for example, new crosses or on-farm verification, is conducted jointly with regional partners. That that regional crop networks with few scaling partners identify and work with a wider range of effective scaling partners or discontinue breeding for that market segment. Like I said earlier, if the material can't get to farmers, then it doesn't make sense to continue breeding. And if it's suboptimal, if there's only a few, then increase those work with a wider range and increase those scaling partners. That standardized network agreements are being implemented with level 1 and level 2 partners. That on a network basis, NAS and CG partners have their costs documented, and that a percentage of network operating costs, aiming for minimum of 30%, is directed to NAS to support breeding and testing efforts. And the evidence here is that, again, through updates in the breeding portal, that via the variety of releases and associated scaling partners, and the Transform team can support up to 6 networks per year, and the Transform/Enable team, because Enable works with a broader with also the parts that cut across market intelligence and inclusive delivery. Okay, so the last goal is around the cross-cutting development activities, and these provide support and coordination to breeding teams to be successful with all those previous 7 goals. And really, the main point I'm wanting to make here is that we, as a cross-cutting team, have also set priorities on where we will focus and what we aim to deliver. And here is the list here, and I can share this the slide deck so that you've got it for your information. And if you, I won't go through this in a lot of detail, and I've already been talking a lot and I want to get to discussion, but it's here. If there's anything there that, so first of all, for you to be aware and for you to know about it, but if there's anything here that you think is not of priority or of value, then please let us know. Okay, this is my last slide, just for some final messages, just to point out that the breeding portal documents the changes we make in our breeding strategy and the key results we achieve. It is really very important. It's not an administrative tool or having the data in there is not an administrative task, because making your breeding strategy is core to a breeding team's success and the role of a breeding lead. The forthcoming harmonised crop report, which you'll see soon, establishes linkages with other systems, with GLOMIT, BioFlow, EBS, Breeding Scheme Manager, and extracts the crucial metrics and supports decision making. And as soon as you do see that, which will be very soon, we do invite breeding teams to provide input and suggestions for additional dashboard-driven analytics. The harmonised crop report will auto-generate evidence files for PRMS innovation reporting, as we discussed and presented in Dubai. And crop teams are encouraged to use the program management platform, the PMP, to document work plans for pooled and bilateral funding. The PMP allows crop teams to define who is responsible for what and who commits to which deliverable or goal with what source of funding. And finally, the breeding portal, GLOMIT, PMP, EBS or BreedBase, BioFlow, the Breeding Scheme Manager, the service portal, these are our key systems tools. And crop teams will be trained in using the functionality applicable to them, with super users trained to use the wider range of functionalities. So it's a lot from me, and I now would like to stop and put it to the group for questions and discussion. I hope I didn't drop off.